Hey, it's your host Dan once again. Today's project is going to be installing a catch can on a GM LS based engine. This is an Elite Engineering catch can I purchased. I got it for 110 bucks, shipped to my door. Normally these are about 180 bucks. I've seen it the cheapest, but I figured by the time I run it a couple thousand miles, it's just going to be worth this anyway, so I might as well just save the money and buy a used one. So for those of you who don't know what a catch can does, I'm just going to explain it real simply. It collects oil. It just catches oil in this little canister. On most cars, at higher RPM especially, you get a condition called blow-by, which means there's a little bit of the combustion gas that gets past the piston rings and gets down in your crankcase, creates like a pressurized oily mist, and that's got to be vented somewhere. In the older days, I think they just had a tube and just vented it straight down to the ground, but you can't do that nowadays. So all the manufacturers will take a hose and they will route that back into the intake. Now it kind of solves that problem, but the inside of your intake can be very oily on the inside of your heads. It's not the greatest solution. So what this does is this goes in between that system, and when the oily mist comes in, it tries to separate it back down into the oil so that you're just sucking air back into your intake and not coating it with a layer of oil. So that's really what a catch can does. It's not a performance part. It just keeps that oily, misty substance from building up on the inside of your intake and the inside of your heads. I'm just taking a moment and getting this part fully cleaned up before I install it. Looks like the guy who sold it to me, he just kind of took it off his car and threw it in the bag. Obviously these parts just screw together, and this is the can that catches the oil. Looks like he dumped it, but it would have been nice if you a little shot of brake fluid and had that cleaned out for me. But this just gives you an idea of what this collects. I mean, would you really want that right there getting sucked down your motor pretty much just a little bit down the ways from your air filter? I sure wouldn't. Would you dump oil into your gas tank to burn it? So that's what this is going to do. It's going to collect the oil in here. So once I get this fully cleaned up, go ahead and install it on the vehicle. Just a couple of minutes with some brake cleaner. Everything's all spotless now. So this is going to be ready to install in the car. Now as far as mounting it, there's a bolt right down here in the head. It's a 13 millimeter bolt. That's how this is going to fit in here with this bracket. This is designed for the LS. I guess depending if you get a catch can for a different kind of car, it might need a different bracket, or maybe you can get a universal, make your own. So I just wanted something quick, simple, easy, and painless. Get that screw out. Okay, that takes care of mounting it. Pretty simple. One bolt. Just to make things a little easier. Get the valve cover out of the way. Put it off to the side for now. Now that the can's installed, the next step is going to be to identify the hose that we're going to interrupt and run in line with. It's right here. It's this guy. It's the guy that makes this little loop. You can see it coming down from the base of the manifold, and it goes straight in to the intake right behind the throttle body. Don't confuse it with this hose. This one here is a fresh air intake, comes off your throttle body and goes down to your valve cover. This is bringing fresh air in. This is going to be the one that has all that oily, misty air that we're going to want to catch on the catch can. So that's my next step, is to this hose right here. I just got to pull it off on each end. And then we're going to extend it and run the connections over to the catch can. Okay, I got the hose cut to length for my application. I use about the best section of the hose that was provided from the used part. Here's one thing to take note, because this is a little piece that I cut out of the longer hose. This was somewhere down the middle of the run. You gotta be careful when you use like wire ties, or it almost looks like this one was pinched inside between something, because when you look through this, the hose is now deformed on the inside, and it's probably blocked off maybe 50-60% on the inside because of that kink in it. So if you're going to use wire ties, just make sure they're just barely snug. That's all you need for, you know, a tube like this, so you don't deform it. Pretty simple. Hose coming in from the like the lifter trays, coming in through the top, goes into the can. Whatever oil drops out of suspension falls into the base of the can. Return comes off to the side back into the manifold. And this is the little tube I pulled off that was on there originally. Just wanted to make note that the bungs, the one from the lifter valley tray and the one on the manifold, are really different sizes. This hose says 11/32. We're using 3/8 inch hose. That seems to work just fine, seals everything up, you know, so nothing's loose. So I just wanted to point that out. And I'm also going to hang on to this in case someday down the road I decide to do the same thing. I want to sell that part used. I'll probably get just as much money for it as I paid for it. But I'm going to hang on to this just in case I want to put things back to stock. Alright, that's a wrap. We're all done. Best thing I like about it is that it looks like it belongs there. It doesn't look like, dare I say, some kind of cheesemo ricey tuner part under the hood. And it's also really good that I just changed the oil just within the last week. So we'll see how much that collects in the future, and I'll follow up with that maybe in the next year or the next oil change, see what that collects and what doesn't get ingested down into the intake of the motor. So I just want to say, hope you learned something today. Hope you enjoyed the video. As always, thanks for watching.